And we could look at the at the polling now, if we just to kind of pivot to that. And so, as we were saying, that red line represents Bloomberg's vote share here, and a little bit of a drop in the averages. However, there are still a number of national polls where Bloomberg is doing quite well. The big story here is in the month of February, that big switch of Joe Biden being the national front runner to Bernie Sanders now being sort of the commanding front runner. But who knows really how this is going to play out in terms of the delegate math. Now we are turning to a large group of primary states rather than caucus states, so we'll be able to sort of better say how the raw count of voters will translate to delegates more clearly, because right now we're in sort of an odd place where Joe Biden is actually the popular vote leader in all of the votes that have been cast in the early states, but Bernie Sanders continues to hold the delegate lead. That sort of oddity of the caucus states will be washed out a little bit after we get the results from Super Tuesday. But what are other people thinking in terms of the overall national state of the race? Is it still sort of Bernie's to lose, or would we expect to see Biden's vote share improve after South Carolina, because we don't have really any polls to demonstrate that. That is, polls that have been in the field since South Carolina.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of looking at this. I mean, it kind of bodes well. We're going to get into the Super Tuesday preview, but as far as the polling goes, do we think... I mean, none of this national polling is going to be helpful over the next 48 hours, right? I mean, nothing's going to catch. I mean, there's polls coming out today with Buttigieg's name in it, and he's clearly out. So... when do you think we'll be able to look at the polling and get some actual useful data?
I mean, we're going to start getting election results before we would get polling results at this point. I think, and the Buttigieg point is interesting still because of the early vote out there. Yes, Buttigieg's name is still on the ballot, so people are able to vote for him. But to your point, Scott, the polling is just going to be uninstructive right now, because there's not enough time to actually reflect any bump, if any, from Biden out of South Carolina. And then, it's still this Mayor Pete kind of phenomenon where you're going to have people reporting. Maybe people who voted early will no longer report that they voted for him. But then the flip side is people may say they're going to vote for him on election day and not yet have realized that he actually dropped out. So it's a mess.
Yeah, complete mess.
Do you think we would expect Biden to see sort of a bump out of South Carolina nationally, or what's your kind of take on that, Scott?
Probably, but not in the states he probably needs it the most, Texas and California, where 30 to 50% of the vote has probably already occurred.
Yeah. And we have a slide for the California polling if we want to dig into that. I was thinking that we might want to look at this just because there's a huge delegate haul out of California.
Yeah. I mean, the question before Buttigieg got out was, could Sanders basically keep everyone else under 15% in California? And there are certainly a lot of votes sitting with Pete Buttigieg's name in registrar's office in California. But there'll be a certain amount of people vote on election day, and that those small few might go to Biden or might go to Klobuchar or Bloomberg, who might get them above 15. Probably not Klobuchar, but certainly Bloomberg's got a shot to get above 15, and so does Biden. There's been a lot of California polls. You can just see the upward trend there for Sanders and the downward trend for everyone else. I guess a slight upward trend for Biden and a slight upward trend for Warren. But
I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about looking at Biden and Buttigieg if we kind of think about it in terms of these lanes. But I think California is also going to be a super interesting case for Elizabeth Warren. She's sort of hovering near that 15% statewide threshold, and we'll kind of see how evenly distributed that is across the state at the congressional district level, because that will have ramifications for the delegate allocation. But I think there's a potential in California for Elizabeth Warren to kind of step in and ruin Bernie's night a little bit. I think there's a lot of conversation about Bernie competing for all the delegates in Massachusetts in Warren's home state, but I actually think the Warren-Sanders fight is a bigger deal out west.
But the interesting thing about timing on that is there's a very good chance that Elizabeth Warren will be out after tomorrow if she doesn't win Massachusetts, right? There's just not so much a path for her. But we may not know her delegate take from Sanders in California for 3 or 4 weeks by the time that's all done. So there may be this lingering after effect, sort of an echo of Elizabeth Warren after she gets out of the race. If she does, I mean, I don't want to assume too much about it, but it's just another interesting dynamic about how voting interacts with the scheduling of these primaries that we're going to be dealing with this going ahead for some time.